Oh man, you beat me again. How does this keep happening? Oh hi! Bacon and I were just playing cards and talking about ethnic food, and you know what? Polish food really doesn't get much representation in this country. Everybody likes to eat their Italian, their Chinese, but some really good food like kielbasa and sauerkraut, and my personal favorite, pierogis, don't really get talked about all that much. Now, pierogis, they're a Polish ravioli. Just a pasta shell stuffed with, well, anything you want, most commonly mashed potatoes. And I won't lie, they're a lot of work to make, but it's definitely worth doing at least once to, if nothing else, give you an appreciation for the ones you buy in the freezer. So I'm Bill, just lost my game of cards to bacon, and you're watching another cooking show. Okay, we're going to start by making the filling. You can do this a day ahead of time. Now there's a lot of different fillings you can make, but we're going to start with just a simple potato, onion, and cheddar. This is something that most people will probably be familiar with. We're going to start with about 4 medium-sized potatoes that have been boiled. Now if you have leftover mashed potatoes from a meal you made the night before, you can go ahead and use those too. To that, we're going to add half of an onion that's been sauteed with half a stick of butter. Try and get as much of that in there as you can. Try and get the butter in there too. Now that that's all in there, we're going to add 1 cup of cheddar cheese. Now you can do this with a hand mixer or even an old-fashioned potato masher. I'm going to go ahead and use a stand mixer, use the paddle attachment. Put her in there and mash up those potatoes. There you go, you have cheesy mashed potatoes. Now you can do this the day before and just move it to another bowl, put it in the fridge overnight if you want to save some time. Okay, since we're making pierogis, you've obviously got to make some kind of noodle. Now the recipes can range from a very simple flour and water to something a little more complex. Now the flour and water will give you a very dense, very heavy noodle. I like something a little bit lighter, so here's how we're going to do it. We're going to start with 2 eggs. Just cracked right into the bowl. 8 ounces of sour cream. And a 1/4 cup of water. Just get this started. We're going to do our best to blend this together, bring it together just a little bit before we start adding any of our dry ingredients. And that looks pretty good. Now we're going to add our dry ingredients. 3 cups of flour. 1 teaspoon, give or take, of salt. And 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. The baking powder will add a little bit of levity to this, make the noodle a little lighter, a little fluffier. If you don't like that, you can skip it. It'll come out just fine. Now you don't need to use a stand mixer. You can start mixing this by hand, and when it comes together, knead it by hand. But that takes a while, so I'm going to use the dough hook, but you don't have to. If you don't have a stand mixer, that's perfectly okay. Now if you look in there, you'll see that it's come together pretty nicely, but there's a lot of really dry flour in the bottom. And that's okay, we're just going to have to add a little bit more water. Remember, if it's too dry, add more water. If it gets too wet and sticky, add more flour. As you can see, it's come together pretty nicely. And we're just gonna keep kneading this for another 10-15 minutes or so. Okay, we're done kneading our dough. So now we gotta roll it out flat and get ready to stuff it. So first we're gonna take our dough. We're just gonna rip a portion off of it. Knead it a little more. Flour your countertop, make sure it's clean. If you have to clean it, use a mixture of water and vinegar and dry it up really good. I wouldn't use Windex right before I was going to throw some dough down on it. Get down and take a rolling pin. Now you might not have a rolling pin, but you really just need something round and heavy you can roll around. A bottle of wine would work great. And we're going to roll this dough out. Need a little more flour on top. And what we want to do is we want to roll this out to about 1/8 of an inch in thickness. Doesn't have to be perfect, but you don't want it to go too thin or they'll fall apart. If you do it too thick, then it's just going to be a really heavy noodle and not a whole lot of filling. Now if you have a pasta machine, you can use that to roll this out. And that looks about right. So now you're going to take a biscuit cutter, 3-inch size. If you don't have biscuit cutters, you can use the lid of a can of non-stick cooking spray. But you want to get about the 3-inch size. If you want a really large one, you could use an empty can of tuna. Just make sure you clean it out real good. We're just going to cut circles out. Try to use as much of the dough, but don't worry, we're going to re-roll this leftover stuff. Now it's time to get your filling out. So the mashed potatoes we made earlier. Now you don't have to use mashed potatoes. If you want to, you could use some sauerkraut. I've seen some really interesting fillers out there. You could use meat-based fillings like sausage. Treat it like ravioli. You could use all cheese. I've even seen some fruit ones. Now you're going to take your round of dough. Just going to scoop out a little bit of the filler. And we're going to fold it in half and pinch it closed. If you want to, you can take a fork and put a little ridge in it. So again, we'll take our next round. We'll do the exact same thing. Nice thing about dough is it'll stretch. You do want to have a good amount of dough to seal it up, otherwise these are going to explode and leak out while you're cooking them. And they'll still taste good, but you don't want that to happen. Now I've got a lot of filling and a lot of dough. This is going to take a while, so let's see if we can work some magic. Whoa, that worked. Thank you, God. Anyhow, these can go right onto a stove and cook, or you could freeze them, which is something I'd recommend doing given how many we have. Now if you're going to freeze them, put them on wax paper lined or parchment paper lined cookie sheets. Put them in your freezer exactly like this. If your freezer won't fit these, get some plates, but put them exactly like this. Let them go in there for 6 to 12 hours, then you can go ahead and put them into bags. If you just throw them into bags and throw them into the freezer, they're going to stick together, and you don't want that. Now we're ready to cook our pierogies. Brought a pot of water to a boil, and we're just going to add the pierogies in. It's hard to tell from this angle, but they sink right to the bottom. Now, the cooking time is going to vary depending on whether or not you froze them or you went straight to it. But expect about 3 to 5 minutes. Now in the second pan, we're going to start sauteing some onions. I've already got half a stick of butter, and in goes 1/4 of an onion. We're just going to saute that over medium heat while the pierogies cook. With a little gentle prodding, they popped right to the surface. So, lower our heat a bit. I'm going to use a spider to just strain them out a bit. We're going to toss them in there. Now we're going to toss these around, let them brown a little. Now that they've cooked a little, you can take off the heat, put them on a plate, and serve them up. That about wraps things up. Boy, do these look delicious. Can't wait to get started. And wait, what's that? Yeah, that's it. What? You want more? You want something a little fancier than just potato, cheese, and onion? Fair enough. So if you're in the mood for something sweet instead, we're going to start with a pound of strawberries that we've diced. And to this bowl, we're going to add 1 cup of sugar. Just pour it on top, as well as 1 teaspoon vanilla extract, 3 tablespoons of lemon juice, 1/2 teaspoon of flour, and 2 tablespoons of melted butter. Spoon, and just mix it up a bit. And you'll want to set this aside just at room temperature for about an hour to let the flavors marry, and let the sugar dissolve a little bit more. Okay, so now we're going to take some more dough. You're going to want this to be a little bit thicker than what we were using with the potatoes, just so it stands up. Take your strawberry mixture, use a slotted spoon if you have one. So you don't want to bring too much of this liquid with you, it'll make it hard to seal the pierogi. Get a little bit, let it drain out, put her on. Just like before, we're going to fold and stretch. Be a little careful here. Fold and stretch. Pretty simple, right? Well, it can actually get even easier. So you don't want to make a fruit mixture? Pull it out. And just get a couple of chocolate chips. Put those on. And just stretch it around. Okay, now to cook your dessert pierogies, we've already boiled them just like we did with the regular ones. Now it's time to deep fry them. Got a pot with a gallon of oil and I've heated it to a little over 350 degrees. And to this, going to gently add our pierogies. And this should take about 5 minutes. Now you'll want to have drained your pierogies and patted them dry. Because you add the water to hot oil, you're going to have an explosion and you're going to hurt yourself. Once they look done, use your spider to pop them out onto a plate. You're going for a nice golden brown color on these. I know this seems like we wasted a lot of oil, but remember you can reuse this. Just let it cool down and then pour it out through a funnel back into the bottle. Just don't try and use it as a cooking ingredient. Only use it to deep fry from here on out. Now, what's the best way to serve this? I like to put 2 of each in a bowl. Sprinkle on a bit of powdered sugar. Add a scoop of ice cream. And a little bit of chocolate sauce. A little bit of caramel sauce. Of course, if you were more sophisticated, you'd do much better patterns than that. You could also throw on some whipped cream and add a cherry on top. And there you have it, pierogies. I'm Bill, and on behalf of Bacon, thanks for watching another cooking show.